So where next with the social media for blacks? You know, what are the new opportunities or new things you're perhaps thinking about?
Yeah, well, it's interesting. When we started off 2.5 years ago with it, the advice was just go easy on Facebook. Facebook hasn't gone away, and there's an argument that says that more and more businesses are using Facebook. So that's probably an area that we're looking at. LinkedIn we're using a lot. Twitter's not stopping. And the reason I sort of injected so much effort into Twitter was I couldn't at the time, and who's to say this won't change, I couldn't think of something that was quicker than Twitter to get the message out. Because if there was something quicker, I think it would have overtaken Twitter.
Absolutely right.
A good sign of that is, 2 years ago, all the work experience students who come into Blacks, we normally have a student in every week, we're all using Facebook, but nobody weren't using Twitter that much. Now they're all using Twitter. There is, the demographics are changing. So what's next is, I think our team will grow from 6 to say 8 or 9. I don't really need everybody in Blacks using Twitter, but I'd like all the departments to be covered off.
Definitely.
And LinkedIn, we have a firm one, Law Blacks, and that effectively cherry picks out from everybody else's tweets. So LinkedIn is one that perhaps do even we, in theory ahead of the game, are we using that quite to the maximum? Probably not, but we're using it to some degree. So I don't think for a second we are the pure experts on this. I'm not saying we've done everything right, and I think it's not going to stop. And I think that's where I expect most of my competitors to catch up and give it a good go, because I think they will all look and say it's not stopping.
Absolutely.
And it's not going to stop. The real reason I'm doing it is because I think the next generation of Blacks clients are using it, and they are using it.
Yeah.
My niece and nephew don't run to their dad for advice on which solicitor to use. They'll go on, in the old days they'd go on to Google, and now they'll go on to YouTube, and now they'll go on to social media, and they'll read the feedback that people give, and I suspect with everybody's attention spans getting shorter and shorter, they'll look on our website and either like what they see or they won't like
Good call.
what they see.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm doing, without giving all my secrets away.
And you said you're really quite good at timekeeping there, so you're spending sort of a cup of tea time a day. So what tools do you use to make that more efficient for you?
Well, of course, all these tablets are incredible in terms of the access, but there are times in the day when I might arrive for a meeting and I'm 10 minutes early. What do you normally do with that? You might make a quick call to a client, or you might just check what's going on Twitter. So it's not, there's also things that, because of this access, things can occur and you can post up a tweet that second. Nadal loses yesterday, you can bob up the result that split second afterwards. Now, the whole world will catch up with it in 10 minutes' time. You're ahead of the game at that point. So, yeah, time management's an issue for all professionals, I think. I'm not perfect on that. I went on a course on the subject myself the other week. But I don't let it take over my day. I don't let my other priorities disappear. It's just part and parcel of an overall marketing, strategy that we have. And I'm just using it. But I keep saying this at every speech I do on the subject. Don't be afraid of it. Just because I'm using it doesn't mean you can't use it. It's like saying you won't use email because I used it first. It's just bonkers, really.
So if there's a new company sort of thinking about going onto social media, I suppose hindsight's a wonderful thing. What sort of 3 tips would you give somebody embarking on that journey? Okay,
the first one is, I'll give you a good example that I've used with people I've given a bit of advice to. A young sportsman setting out in Leeds today, I would say to that sports person, don't tweet about what you're having for your tea. Don't tweet when you've had a drink. But tweet about what you're doing. How focused you are on achieving your objective as a sports person. How much training are you doing? Tell people that you've been out for a 10-mile run. Tell them that this is part and parcel of something you're building to, what your aspirations are. Let them buy into what you're doing. So it's, let them almost, because then they feel close to you. What is this celebrity culture we have? People like knowing people and they feel they know them a bit better. Secondly, I'd say, I've got a client at the moment who has suddenly got a huge amount of exposure, national positive exposure, I would say. My advice to that person yesterday was, you will receive lots of tweets from people saying, I saw you on this item. I say try and reply to as many as you possibly can. Not huge, long, lengthy essays, but one word. So thank you. Thanks for the feedback. Appreciated. People love it. Robbie Savage is popular on Twitter because he responds and he retweets. If you were doing a sponsored walk and you say, Robbie, I'm doing this, if he sees it, he's very likely to retweet it for you. Because, and your feedback on that is, what a good guy.
Yeah.
So, I say that. And really then, it is to keep up with it. It isn't to start something and then leave it for 40 days. People are absolutely right to unfollow you if you're boring.
Yeah,
or you're not doing anything.
Turn the channel. Yep.
And if people are like me, they will follow a certain number of people, and then they might just go through those people a few weeks later and say, what are these people doing? What am I actually gaining from them? Are they interested? And that's why I try to keep things moving and mix it up a bit, because I totally accept that if people think I'm boring, they can unfollow me tomorrow. Fair game.
Yeah.
So I think those are my sort of short-term tips for people, just to get started.
And just one last question then, Chris. Really thinking about the sort of legal side of it, do you think that the law is actually slowly catching up with social media? I know for example, there was some recent arrests around people inciting racism on Twitter. For example.
Yeah, it is catching up. It's a new area. I mean, you want a good example of how the law is catching up. Look at the Twitter joke trial. If you hashtag that and follow that, that's about an individual who made a silly comment on Twitter about being frustrated at the airport, Robin Hood Airport, and how he said he was going to blow it up. I don't think too many people actually believed that he was going to, but the lad was prosecuted. It's daft for putting it up, without a shadow of a doubt. But what's that? The issue there was the High Court judges between them in the first instance couldn't decide on the appeal what to do. They've referred it to another panel of judges, and that was being heard actually, I think yesterday or the day before. So they are catching up. The judiciary is on Twitter. You can find them. The cases are catching up, and you've seen the issue about Ryan Giggs is, being exposed, if you want to use that phraseology, on Twitter. The Ched Evans case, where the victim was named on Twitter. Those people that named that victim were quite rightly arrested and interviewed. And I think the law needs to put a foot down and say, it isn't open season here. There's all sorts of regulations about using social media and all sorts of media. You've got the good old common law of, defamation anyway.
Absolutely.
So that hasn't gone away. So, what you can cram into 140 characters, well, you can cram a few things in. So, people need to be sensible, and of course, from an employer's perspective, then you come on to the whole thing of catching up with, well, I've got a contract of employment because I know I've got to have them because the Employment Right Act says so, and then I have an IT policy that says, hey, don't misuse email and the website, and now actually, you either need to incorporate into that a section specifically about social media, or you know what, go get a social media policy that lets your staff know what is and what is not acceptable. And secondly, I think the really interesting area is, what about the profiles and the listings that people are building up on LinkedIn, for example, on Twitter? The 2,500 followers, whatever I've got, are they Chris Allen's or are they Black's? Solicitors. I've done it under the Black's banner. I've done it at work. So where do we stand on that? And that's an area I think that people will overlook because, it's like all these things. It's a bit dry subject to sort of think about a new policy, but it's the policy to have.
Completely.
I'll be honest with you.
Completely. Well, thank you so much for your time. Some real good gems in there.
No problem.
And look forward to catching up with you sometime soon.
I shall tweet about it.
Look forward to it.
All right, thank you.
And that's over and out, and that's Charlotte Britton reporting for Optimum Exposure.